I now give the floor to Mr. Leonardo Santos Simão. President of the Council, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Council, I have the honor to present to you today the report of the Secretary General on the activities of the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel, UNOWAS. Please allow me at the outset to extend my most sincere congratulations to the Democratic Republic of the Congo for assuming the presidency of the Council throughout the month of July and to wish them a fruitful presidency. On 19th of July in Sierra Leone, an ECOWAS summit will be held with a dual purpose, both the ordinary one and the one devoted to establishing the future of regional integration in West Africa following recent political events in the area. In a region plagued by heightened political tensions, aggravating an already fragile security situation, we are committed to promoting dialogue, to fostering mutual understanding, convey messages of encouragement, and seeking common ground with all stakeholders, government leaders, regional institutions, United Nations bodies, civil society, women, and young leaders.
Distinguished members of the Council, in West Africa and the Sahel, three broad trends stand out. First, the concerning security situation. Second, the renewal of the momentum for dialogue and cooperation. And thirdly, the democratic developments occurring in the region. On the security situation, the threat posed by terrorists and other non-state armed groups remains acute, especially in the Central Sahel and northern Nigeria, rapidly targeting coastal states in the Gulf of Guinea. These groups are adapting their tactics, increasingly using advanced technology such as drones, means of communication, and cryptocurrencies. Their attacks are coordinated across multiple fronts, including across countries. Their actions intersect with international organized crime and are aimed at consolidating territorial and economic control, erosion of public confidence in state authority, with serious damage to social cohesion. On 25th April, a coalition of the terrorist group Jama Nusrat al-Islam wa Muslim, or Jenin, and the Malian separatist group Front de Libération de l'Azawad, or FLA, launched the simultaneous attacks against strategic targets in Bamako, in Kati, Kidal, Gao, and Mopti, among others, causing civilian and military casualties, including the death of the Minister of Defense. Partial blockade imposed on key supply routes into Bamako is disrupting the movement of essential goods and services, and attacks on power lines are affecting supply of electricity and water. More recently, fighting between the Malian armed forces and the FLA-Jenin coalition has moved in northern Mali, especially in the Kidal and Gao regions. In Niger, terrorist attacks occurred at the airport of Niamey, as well as against a military base in Tawa between January and June. Attacks have also been reported in Tillabéri and the Difa regions. Burkina Faso continued to face assaults, including drone-enabled operations, particularly in the north and east regions. The authorities announced plans to recruit 100,000 reservists and approximately 12,000 military personnel by the end of 2026. In Nigeria, the north and middle belt also experienced continued attacks, abductions, and high civilian casualties. The human cost of the violence is devastating. As of the end of February, about 6.8 million people were internally displaced across the region, in addition to around 1.28 million refugees and asylum seekers, including approximately 220,000 in Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Togo. In Liberia, authorities report a steep increase in the migrant populations of Burkinabe since 2026, from about 40,000 to around 120,000 today. This is placing high pressure on host communities, land resources, and basic social services. Coupled with terrorism, drug trafficking, production, and consumption are a rapidly growing phenomenon in the region, affecting mainly coastal states, where increasing quantities of different types of this substance are being seized by the authorities. Youth are the principal victims, but there are also reports of their use by terrorist combatants. Furthermore, political and public institutions in some countries are reportedly threatened by drugs syndicates, leading to their weakening. Humanitarian access remains severely constrained in many areas, while funding shortfalls are reducing the reach of life-saving assistance. Women, children, and young people continue to bear the brunt of displacement, insecurity, rights violations, and limited access to essential services. Attacks on schools underscore the wider toll of insecurity that insecurity is taking on the future prospects of entire communities. However, new investments in school and vocational training infrastructure, as well as alternative learning methods, are helping keep education within reach for vulnerable or displaced children and youth, including girls, in hard-to-reach areas. Faced with these challenges, regional actors were working hard to find solutions. I repeat, faced with these challenges, regional actors are working hard to find solutions. ECOWAS has renewed efforts to operationalize its standby force, but at a lower dimension than needed due to financial limitations. The implementation of the Council Resolution 2719 was expected to be a major UN contribution in assisting the region to face the growing challenge of terrorism. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Council, West Africa and the Sahel are experiencing a new impetus in terms of dialogue. A high-level consultative conference on regional cooperation and security held in Accra in January brought together regional leaders and partners who committed to rebuilding trust and establishing a new security cooperation mechanism to replace the Accra initiative. Further consultations then took place with the inclusion of new actors, including European and other regions, with the active participation of all IAS and ECOWAS member states. In the same spirit, ECOWAS has appointed the former Prime Minister of Guinea, Lansana Koyate, as a chief negotiator in charge of dialogue with the AES countries, and consultations are now ongoing. In addition, actors such as Senegal and Togo are multiplying initiatives so as to bring positions closer together and promote a common strategy to combat the scourge of terrorism and organized crime in the region. It is also worth highlighting the growing role of the African Union, which is playing an increasingly important role in promoting dialogue, rapprochement between the parties, and strategic coherence. This development is reflected in particular in enhanced cooperation with ECOWAS, as well as in increased exchanges with Mali and other countries in the region.
Distinguished members of the Council, UNOWAS has remained fully engaged in encouraging and supporting these developments for dialogue and cooperation. During the reporting period, I consulted leaders and senior officials across the region, including Ghana, Togo, Niger, and Senegal, as well as with the ECOWAS, the AU, and the European envoys, as well as international partners in Abuja, Brussels, Washington, and Paris. Convening regional and international actors in Banjul in April, the AU Special Representative and head of the AU Mission for Mali and Sahel, Mamadou Sangara, presented the mission's new approach, built around respect for sovereignty, unconditional dialogue, and inclusive institutional engagement. These exchanges show that there is a shift from confrontation towards collaboration and constructive engagement that is beginning to produce concrete results. On 9 February, Niger and Nigeria reopened the Kamba border crossing, restoring a significant trade corridor. The attendance by the Prime Minister of Niger, as well as the foreign ministers of Burkina Faso and Mali, at the inauguration of the President Romuald Wadani of Benin, and President Wadani's subsequent tour to Niamey, Ouagadougou, and Bamako, and the broader Sahel signaled a renewed commitment to improving relations. Talks are ongoing for the reopening of the Niger-Benin border. The Mano River Union also stepped up its engagement for dialogue as the presidents of Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone met in Conakry to address growing tensions in their border areas and recommitted to peaceful dispute resolution. In Sierra Leone, mediation by the international moral guarantors, including ECOWAS and UNOWAS, helped secure an agreement between the government and the opposition on key steps to accelerate the implementation of the agreement for national unity and the recommendations of the tripartite committee. More recently, Mali and Algeria decided to normalize their bilateral relations by opening their respective airspaces and reinstating their ambassadors. These are some examples of regional efforts towards dialogue and leading to cooperation among the countries of the region. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, although facing multiple challenges, democracy is taking root in the region, as reflected by peaceful elections, reforms, and continued steps towards accountable governance. During the reporting period, elections proceeded peacefully in Benin, Cabo Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, and Guinea. In Cabo Verde, the opposition returned into power after a decade, while in Benin, the April presidential election concluded the 2026 electoral cycle. Reform efforts are also underway in several countries. In Ghana, the establishment of a specialized High Court division to expedite corruption, illegal mining, and asset recovery cases is a significant step towards strengthening accountability. In the Gambia, the appointment of a special prosecutor and the establishment of a special criminal division in the High Court is a positive step towards ensuring transitional justice. In Senegal, following national dialogues in 2024 and 2025, reform efforts have continued, including the ongoing constitutional reform. In Mauritania, a national dialogue is on agenda. In several countries, especially in the Central Sahel, authorities have introduced new regulatory frameworks for the exercise of political and civic freedoms and functioning of association and public actors. These measures reflect in part an intention by the authorities to strengthen state authorities during a period of transition and heightened insecurity, although anxieties and criticism by political parties and civil society groups are mounting. While timelines for a return to constitutional order remain unclear in the three Central Sahel states, The need to ensure stability, accountability, and the rule of law, as well as respect for human rights and inclusive governance, remain. Mr. President of the Council, distinguished members of the Council, security responses alone will not be sufficient. To successfully address the root causes of instability, investments are needed in the social, economic, and environmental foundations of peace. That's why UNOWAS has continued to work across a range of regional priorities. In January, we convened a dialogue on water diplomacy with the region's major basin organizations, United Nations entity, and regional institutions, reaffirming water cooperation as a tool for conflict prevention, climate resilience, and regional integration ahead of the 2026 United Nations Water Conference. We have also continued supporting the implementation of the Yaoundé Maritime Security Architecture, recognizing that insecurity on land and insecurity at sea are part of the same wider ecosystem of organized crime and illicit trafficking. Together with the UNODC, we also convened a dialogue between youth and government authorities in Dakar on emerging drugs, youth, and security, highlighting the growing risks posed by proliferation of new drugs and their implication for social cohesion, public health, and terrorism financing. We have also seen positive examples of holistic national action to address the root causes of some of these challenges. In northern Togo, I was able to witness the positive impact on security by combining security measures with the development and humanitarian interventions led by the government with the UN support. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, for this year, the economy of the region is projected to grow by about 5% in average, with strong growth in countries such as Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, Niger, the Gambia, and Senegal. However, domestic and external debt burdens, inflation, national security expenditure, shrinking fiscal space, and external shocks continue to mitigate the social impact of these gains. Fighting poverty and vulnerability must therefore remain a common objective in the broader fight against terrorism. The Cameroon-Nigeria Mixed Commission is in its final phase of implementing the 2002 International Court of Justice judgment, with steps toward demarcating the last 36 kilometers on the border under preparation. This is an example of how patient and principled engagement can transform potentially divisive issues into a framework for cooperation. In a related development, Ghana's decision to refer its maritime dispute with Togo to arbitration under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea is another welcome affirmation that international law is a viable and constructive path to peaceful dispute. Mr. President, members of the Council, UNOWAS remains fully committed to implementing its mandate in support of peace, constitutional governance, and regional cooperation in West Africa and the Sahel. Following the letter of the President of the Council of 19 February 2026, welcoming the Secretary General's decision to conduct an independent strategic review of the UNOWAS mandate and activities, the review process has started, led by former President of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Madame Saleh Work Zewde. We look forward to its conclusions and recommendations as an important contribution to make UNOWAS more adapted to evolving realities in West Africa and the Sahel and consolidate the relevance of the United Nations in the region. In concluding, I want to express our gratitude for the support UNOWAS continues to receive from the Council. I thank you for the attention.
I thank Mr. Simão for his briefing. I now give the floor to those Council members who wish to make statements.